Black CEO's luggage thrown off the plane. 9 minutes later, she grounds the entire crew. You don't belong here. The words snapped through the morning air like a seatbelt pulled too hard. A hush fell across the tarmac. The hum of jet engines faded, replaced by the sound of one suitcase hitting concrete hard. Clothes spilled out silk against asphalt. The woman in the cream suit didn't move. She just looked down at the open case, then back up at the man who had thrown it. His face flushed, his hand still on the handle, as if he could take the act back. He couldn't. Passengers nearby froze halfway through boarding. A few lifted their phones, unsure if they were filming a story or a mistake. You heard me, the man said louder now, feeding off the silence. Economy passengers check in over there. This gate's for first class. She didn't answer. The scarf around her neck fluttered once in the wind, soft gold against the morning light. Her voice, when it came, was measured, calm, almost too quiet. I'm exactly where I paid to be. The ground staff beside him smirked. Sure you did. Someone in the crowd whispered, she doesn't look like first class. For a second, her eyes flicked toward that voice, then back to her suitcase. One heel clicked against the concrete, a sound sharper than any retort. She knelt slowly and began gathering her things. Each folded piece of clothing slid back into the case, with the precision of someone who'd been humiliated before and learned not to break. Behind her, the man muttered to his colleague, I'm tired of people trying to sneak into places they don't belong. A flash of memory crossed her mind in airport 10 years ago. Another morning, another uniformed man using that same word, belong. Back then, she had walked away. Today, she stayed. Her phone buzzed in her palm. A short text from Nia, ready when you are. She didn't reply. Not yet. Instead, she stood, dusted the edge of her blazer, and met his stare head on. You threw my luggage, she said softly. Would you like to throw me next? The crowd stirred. The tone wasn't angry. It was something colder, authority wrapped in composure. He stepped closer, puffed up by the attention. Don't get smart with me, lady. A woman behind him whispered, just let her board. He ignored her. This area is for priority passengers only. She tilted her head, voice even lower. Priority? Interesting word. Then louder enough for everyone to hear. Tell me, how do you decide who's worthy of it? No one answered. From a distance, a man in a navy suit, a supervisor, began walking toward them, expression unreadable. The staff straightened, suddenly uncertain. The woman in the cream suit didn't look away. Her posture didn't waver. Before the next line could be spoken, she turned slightly toward the camera phones now recording and said, before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we're glad you're here. Now, back to her. She lifted the suitcase by its handle, still scratched, still hers, and waited. The man exhaled, realizing too late that the storm he'd started had already begun to turn. And in 9 minutes, everyone on that runway would learn who she really was. The woman didn't argue. She just rolled her suitcase upright and fixed the handle with a quiet click that sounded louder than the voices around her. Her name, though no one here knew it yet, was Ariana Cole. 42. Founder and CEO of Aerolux Holdings, the same company that just 2 weeks ago had finalized its acquisition of Horizon Air. But this morning, she wasn't flying for business. She was flying for truth. She had shown up unannounced, booked under a generic name, no entourage, no security detail, and no press. Just one assistant monitoring everything from the control tower in New York, Nia Thompson. Ariana wanted to see what her company had become when people thought no one was watching. The ground agent who'd thrown her luggage now barked orders to another staffer, his tone smug and self-assured. Tag it non-priority. We don't need delays from people like her. People like her. That phrase clung to the air like smoke. Ariana's face didn't change. Her eyes flicked toward the aircraft, its silver fuselage gleaming beneath a blue sky streaked with exhaust lines. That plane carried her logo now discreetly embossed near the tail. She'd designed it herself. She turned slightly toward the crowd. A teenage boy watching whispered to his mother, "Why is everyone staring?" His mother murmured. "Because she doesn't look rich enough to argue." One sentence. One mirror of a lifetime of assumptions. Ariana exhaled slowly, the sound almost lost under the rolling thunder of turbines. Behind her, the gate supervisor finally arrived, the man in the navy suit from the photo, authoritative posture, tight smile. Is there a problem here? Yes, said the ground agent quickly. This passenger's causing a disturbance. Tried to check in through the wrong gate. Ariana didn't turn to face him. She adjusted her scarf instead, the gold fabric catching the light like a quiet crown. The supervisor crossed his arms. Ma'am, we have policies for a reason. She looked at him calm. And policies should protect people, not pride. He blinked, momentarily disarmed, then regained his edge. We'll reassign your ticket. Wait by the economy desk. A small laugh escaped her lips, not amused, just tired. You're making a very expensive mistake. Someone in the line muttered. Entitled much. Another whispered. Probably using someone else's pass. The tension built like static before a storm. Ariana glanced at her watch. 10:06 a.m. She didn't have to be anywhere else. But they were all about to be. Her phone vibrated again, a short message from Nia, recording live feeds from Gate 12. You sure you want this public? Ariana typed back. Not yet. Let's see who speaks first. Across the terminal, the young trainee, the one with the hesitant eyes, kept glancing at the system monitor. He had noticed something strange, the passenger file marked A. Cole, Executive Access Tier 1. He hesitated, torn between truth and job security. The supervisor stepped closer, lowering his voice. I'm asking you nicely to move, ma'am. She met his eyes. And I'm asking you to think before you do. He frowned. About what? About who you're speaking to. That silence again, heavy, sharp, unbreathing. The teenage boy whispered, She's not scared. His mother nodded. No, she's waiting. Ariana smoothed the crease on her sleeve and said nothing. The wind shifted, carrying the scent of jet fuel and pride. Somewhere in the background, a boarding announcement echoed Flight 217, now departing for Los Angeles. Ariana didn't move, because her story wasn't about where she was going. It was about who she was and what this airport was about to learn. And as the engines roared behind her, every eye that once judged her was about to witness what quiet power really looked like. The noise returned slowly, murmurs, rolling suitcases, the shuffle of judgment disguised as protocol. Ariana stayed still. The gate supervisor, now sweating beneath the collar of his navy jacket, gestured sharply at two attendants by the counter. Escort her back to the economy desk. We've got premium clients boarding. Premium clients. That word landed harder than the suitcase. One of the attendants, a young woman with blonde hair, and the confidence of unchecked authority, stepped forward. Ma'am, please don't make this difficult. We're trying to be polite. Polite. The word tasted like poison. Ariana's gaze didn't lift. You should save your politeness for when you need forgiveness. The attendant blinked, caught off guard, then turned to the supervisor. See what I mean? She's being hostile. Hostile. Another word weaponized to erase dignity. Passengers began whispering again. Some curious, some uneasy. A man in a designer jacket muttered, You'd think she'd know her place. A woman beside him rolled her eyes. Some people just want attention. Ariana closed her eyes briefly, just long enough to steady her breath. When she opened them, the expression was gone, replaced by that calm, surgical precision she'd learned in boardrooms, built to test her patience. You're delaying my flight, the supervisor said, his tone sharper now. Either cooperate or we'll call security. You already did, Ariana said quietly. The man hesitated. What I can hear the boots, she replied, eyes flicking toward the glass doors, where two uniformed guards were already walking briskly across the terminal floor. The blonde attendant crossed her arms. Good. Maybe they'll convince you this gate isn't for you. Ariana finally looked at her. And what does someone like me look like to you? The woman smirked, gesturing at Ariana's modest carry-on in plain heels. Not like someone flying first class, that's for sure. A ripple of discomfort moved through the crowd. A few passengers shifted uneasily. Others filmed out right now. Ariana's hand brushed over the top of her suitcase. One slow, deliberate motion. The danger of judging someone by what they wear, she said softly, is realizing too late that you've been dressing beneath them all along. The attendant froze. The supervisor's jaw tensed. Security reached the gate, their radios crackling. What's the issue here? One of them asked, scanning Ariana with the same dismissive glance that had become choreography. Possible fraud, the supervisor replied. She's claiming a premium ticket under another name. I claim nothing, Ariana said. I showed my ID. You refused to look. The taller guard stepped forward. Ma'am, we can sort this out if you come with us. I'll stay right here, she said evenly. You'll want witnesses for what's about to happen. Her voice carried now calm, firm, and utterly unshaken. A tone that turned heads. The crowd pressed closer, drawn to the gravity of composure. Even the trainee at the computer had stopped pretending to type. His eyes darted between Ariana and the blinking monitor that clearly displayed A. Cole. Tier 1 access. Verified. He whispered almost to himself. She's cleared. The supervisor snapped. What was that? The trainee swallowed hard. Her ticket. It's valid. She's not lying. The words cut through the air like a warning shot. Everyone heard them. Everyone except the ones who didn't want to. The blonde attendant turned on him instantly. Stay out of this, rookie. You don't know how these systems work. But he did. And his trembling hands said more than his silence ever could. Ariana glanced toward him, the first acknowledgement of solidarity in an entire room built on hierarchy. Just a nod, nothing more. Then she turned back to the supervisor. Call whoever you need, she said. But remember, every call leaves a record. That line hung in the air, clean and sharp, like a legal clause written in blood. Outside the window, a plane lifted into the sky, one of hers. And for the first time, the staff began to wonder if they just picked a fight with the woman who owned the runway beneath their feet. The hum of the terminal deepened that low, uneasy chorus before something breaks. The two security guards hovered near Ariana, now unsure whether to act or wait for orders. The crowd, half passengers, half accidental jurors, pretended to check their phones while watching every breath. The trainee, Evan Morales, stood frozen at the check-in console. The name A. Cole, Tier 1 verified, still pulsed in blue on his screen. He'd seen it minutes ago, but fear had pinned his tongue. The supervisor leaned toward him. You got something to say, son, Evan hesitated. Sir, the system, don't start. The man's voice cut him off. You're new. You don't know what you're looking at. But Evan did know. He'd completed the same verification training 2 weeks ago. And the ticket blinking on his monitor wasn't fake, wasn't flagged, it was corporate. Owner-level clearance. His pulse thudded against the collar of his uniform. He looked at Ariana again, calm, steady, almost impossibly still. Sir, he tried again louder. This time her name's valid. The code matches executive access. The supervisor's jaw tightened. That's impossible. We don't have any executives traveling today. Ariana tilted her head. You do now. The crowd stirred, whispers moving like wind through tall grass. The blonde attendant snapped. He's reading it wrong. Happens all the time. Evan's voice cracked but didn't break. No, ma'am. It doesn't. A few passengers nearby gasped softly small sounds, but they carried. The supervisor turned on him, voice low and lethal. Do you like this job? Morales. Evan didn't answer. He just looked at Ariana. She met his gaze with the faintest nod, the kind that said, you're not crazy for seeing the truth. Something inside him steadied. I can print it, Evan said, suddenly pressing a key. The machine whirred to life, spitting out a slip of paper that glowed under the fluorescent lights. He held it up, trembling. Tier 1 verified. Passenger Ariana Cole. Silence. Heavy. Sharp. Someone in the crowd whispered, wait, Cole, like Ariana Cole. The supervisor's face went pale, but his pride dug its heels in. So what could be a glitch? Ariana smiled, the kind of smile that doesn't warm, it warns. Your systems don't glitch, she said softly. People do. The line landed like judgment. The guard on her right shifted uncomfortably. Ma'am, maybe we can just step aside and confirm this. No, Ariana said, her voice calm as a level horizon. We'll confirm it right here. You see, the problem isn't verification, it's recognition. Evan lowered the paper onto the counter, hands shaking. She's cleared, he repeated quietly. But no one moved. A woman filming near the gate whispered into her phone. I think we're watching someone realize they just insulted their boss. Her video would hit 1 million views before the hour ended. The supervisor rubbed his temples, searching for footing he no longer had. Fine. We'll double-check with Central, he said, signaling the attendant. But the attendant didn't move. Her eyes had gone wide, reflecting the blue letters, still glowing, A. Cole. Ariana adjusted her scarf and said almost gently, I told you you're making an expensive mistake. Evan exhaled the weight of silence, shifting from fear to relief. For the first time, someone else had said what he'd been too afraid to, that power doesn't need to shout to be real. Around them, the crowd began to murmur again, no longer mocking but uncertain, uneasy. Because in that moment, even before the truth became official, everyone could feel it. The hierarchy of the gate had flipped. The woman they tried to remove wasn't a passenger anymore. She was the storm, and the runway had just gone dark. The paper slip trembled in Evan's hand, like a truth the room didn't want to touch. The supervisor snatched it away before Ariana could respond. "This means nothing," he said. "Could be forged." "Forged," Ariana echoed, tone flat like the calm before thunder. The blonde attendant stepped closer, chin high. "You think waving a fancy paper changes protocol. You don't belong in this section." And then it happened again, the same 5 words that had followed her whole life. "You don't belong in this section." Not a statement. A verdict. Ariana didn't blink. But something shifted behind her eyes, a flicker of memory sharp enough to draw blood. She was 26 again, standing at a hotel counter in Atlanta after a red-eye flight. She'd worn the same calm face then, too. The clerk had taken one look at her credit card and said, "You don't look like a guest who stays here." They'd canceled her room for security reasons. She'd slept in the lobby chair that night, the start of a company she built to ensure no one else would. Now, standing under the same fluorescent cruelty, she felt that old heat rise, but not as anger. As focus. The supervisor waved at the guards. "We're done. Remove her from the gate." "Sir, maybe we should," one guard began. Now he barked. Evan stepped forward, voice shaking. "She's verified. You can't." "Step back, Morales." The taller guard reached for Ariana's suitcase. "Ma'am, please cooperate." She didn't move. "Touch that bag," she said softly, "and you'll wish you hadn't." The words weren't shouted. They were precise, surgical. The kind of warning you only hear once in your life. The guard hesitated. The crowd didn't breathe. The terminal itself seemed to hold still, as if metal and air had taken her side. Then the supervisor tried a different weapon: humiliation. "You know I've dealt with your type before. Flashy confidence, fake credentials, loud attitude. Always ends the same way: security escort." Ariana's lips curved just slightly. "And I've dealt with yours: small authority, loud ego, short career." A soft gasp rippled through the crowd. Phones tilted higher. The blonde attendant snapped. "This is getting ridiculous." She grabbed Ariana's arm. Everything froze. The room went silent except for the squeal of a rolling suitcase somewhere behind them. Ariana turned her head slowly toward the hand gripping her sleeve. The attendant's confidence faltered. "Let go," Ariana said. But the attendant didn't, not yet. Not until the supervisor hissed, "Do it." So she did. And as her hand fell away, the mark it left invisible. But burning became the line that divided ignorance from consequence. Ariana straightened her blazer eyes cold. That, she said quietly, was your final mistake. Her phone buzzed once in her hand. "One name on the screen, Nia." She answered without looking away from the supervisor. "Yes." Nia's voice came crisp through the speaker. "We're live on internal systems. Protocol 7 is active. Would you like me to confirm ownership status?" The supervisor frowned. Ownership of what? Ariana didn't reply. She just stared at him, the silence doing what words couldn't. Nia's voice filled the air again. "Clear, professional, undeniable, confirming authorization. Ariana Cole, majority shareholder and CEO of Aerolux Holdings, parent company of Horizon Air." The sound hit harder than any shout. Someone in the crowd whispered, "Oh my God." Another lowered her phone in disbelief. The supervisor's face drained of color. The blonde attendant stepped back like the floor had turned to glass. Ariana ended the call, slid the phone into her pocket and said quietly, "Now that we know who doesn't belong, shall we continue?" And just like that, the power in the room changed hands without a single raised voice, without a single wasted word. The moment hung suspended, like time itself had been caught mid-breath. Every eye fixed on Ariana, the woman they had tried to erase, now revealed as the one who owned the logo stitched above their badges. The supervisor's throat worked, but no sound came out. The blonde attendant backed away, hand trembling near her earpiece. The guards lowered their radios, realizing they'd been seconds away from arresting their employer. Ariana didn't gloat. She didn't even smile. She simply reached for her phone again, the motion slow, deliberate, sovereign. "Nia," she said quietly, "initiate containment." "Yes, ma'am," came the reply through the speaker, calm as a metronome. "Security feed locked. Audio recording engaged. All staff IDs under review." The words echoed through the gate like scripture. Evan Morales, still behind the counter, looked from her to the others, eyes wide. "She wasn't bluffing," he whispered. The supervisor tried to salvage pride from the wreckage. "This isn't necessary," he stammered. We can talk about this in private," No, Ariana said. "You made it public. We'll finish it the same way." Her voice wasn't loud yet. It filled the space. A command carried not by volume, but gravity. Passengers began filming again, not out of cruelty this time, but awe. The guard nearest her murmured, "Ma'am, should we clear the area?" Ariana shook her head. "No. Let them see what accountability looks like." She tapped her phone once more. The airport's internal chime pinged overhead, a system alert that normally preceded weather delays. But this time it carried a different message. "Attention Protocol 7 has been activated. Please remain where you are." The announcement froze even the coffee vendors 20 feet away. The blonde attendant turned pale. "Protocol what?" The supervisor glared at her. "Don't panic." Ariana's gaze slid to him. "That's the first smart thing you've said all day." Then calmly, she walked to the counter, her heels striking the tile like punctuation marks. "Mr. Morales," she said. He straightened instinctively. "Yes, ma'am. Print every incident log tied to this gate since 8 a.m., she instructed. "Cross-reference with my employee list. Send it to Nia." "Yes, ma'am," he said again, already typing. The supervisor's voice cracked. "You can't just order my staff." "Your staff," Ariana interrupted softly. "Correction. My staff." The tone wasn't angry. It was administrative lethal in its composure. Her phone buzzed once more. Nia's voice returned crisp live over speaker. "Containment complete. Local management notified. Corporate oversight on line 2. Patch them through," Ariana said. A different voice filled the air, now smooth, male, respectful. "Miss Cole, this is Richard Lang, Chief Operations. We're monitoring the situation. Do you require intervention?" Ariana glanced around the gate at the guards, who suddenly looked like schoolchildren at the trembling attendant still clutching her ID. "No, Richard," she replied. "I require accountability." "Yes, ma'am." "Full authority granted." "Good." She ended the call with one tap, the sound echoing like a gavel. The supervisor swallowed hard. "Miss Cole, please, this was a misunderstanding." Ariana met his eyes. "No, Mr. Hayes. This was a test." He blinked. "A test," she nodded. "And you failed it publicly." The blonde attendant whispered, "We didn't know who you were." That, Ariana said, isn't an excuse. It's the problem. The room fell silent again, heavy but different now, not with arrogance but reckoning. Evan handed her the printed logs pages, trembling slightly in his hands. She took them, skimmed once, and set them on the counter. "Mr. Hayes," she said softly, "do you know what happens after a protocol breach?" He shook his head. "Everything gets reviewed," she replied. "Every word, every action, every silence." She looked up, eyes sharp as glass. "You called security on the person who signs your paychecks. Let that settle." And as the air around her shifted equal parts, fear and respect, Ariana Cole didn't raise her voice, didn't demand obedience. She simply stood there, calm and absolute, while the world that had dismissed her just minutes ago began to orbit around her truth. No one spoke for several seconds, not the guards, not the supervisor, not even the crowd pressed against the boarding gate. The silence was no longer awkward. It was reverent. Everyone in that terminal had just realized the woman they tried to humiliate owned the very system they served. Ariana stood at the center of it, all composed as marble, phone still in her hand. The airport lights reflected off her scarf like liquid gold. She didn't move to leave or to lecture. She simply turned toward the counter where the logo of Horizon Air gleamed across the glass, her logo. "Mr. Hayes," she said, finally, her tone cool but precise. "Tell me again what kind of passengers are allowed to board here." The supervisor hesitated. His mouth opened, then shut again. "First-class passengers only." Ariana nodded slowly. "Correct." "And what defines a first-class passenger?" he faltered. "Ticket-type boarding status." "No," she interrupted softly. "Respect defines it." The sentence landed like a verdict. She placed her phone flat on the counter. The black screen reflected their faces, two guards, one trembling attendant, a crowd behind them watching history repeat itself differently this time. You called me a fraud, Ariana said, her voice even. In a company I own. The line hit like thunder breaking glass. Phones lifted, capturing her face, calm, flawless, undeniable. The blonde attendant stepped back, whispering, "Oh my God." Ariana didn't stop. You threw my luggage, she continued, as if my dignity wasn't inside it. You decided who belongs and who doesn't without once checking who you were speaking to. Mr. Hayes tried to find ground. It was a mistake. It was a choice, Ariana cut in. And choices have weight. The words rolled through the gate, sharp and deliberate. The murmuring crowd fell silent again. Evan Morales stood just behind her voice, barely audible. They're all recording this. Good, Ariana said. Maybe next time they'll remember what power sounds like when it doesn't need to shout. She turned toward the guards. What are your names? The taller one straightened instantly. Gee, Grant, ma'am. This is Officer Lyle. Grant. Lyle. She repeated each syllable, crisp. You responded to a false report. You're not at fault for being called. You are, however, accountable for what you do next. Grant swallowed. Understood, ma'am. Ariana gave a single nod, then looked back to the trembling blonde attendant. You grabbed my arm. The woman's lips parted. I was just following orders. That's what everyone says, Ariana replied quietly until the order cost them everything. The attendant's eyes glistened. She looked down. Ariana turned to the crowd, now not as a performance, but as a reckoning. This, she said, is what discrimination looks like when it thinks no one important is watching. It's casual, it's confident, and it's wrong. People lowered their phones, ashamed of how long they had stayed silent. Behind her, the faint sound of an incoming text pinged through the speaker system, Nia's voice returning calm and resolute. Authorization confirmed. Legal and compliance teams online. Do you wish to proceed with corrective action? Ariana didn't even glance at her phone. Proceed, she said. A pause, then Nia's clear reply. Effective immediately suspension notice issued to Gate 12 management and staff involved in the incident. Access credentials revoked. The terminal lights flickered, once subtle but unmistakable. The ID scanners behind the counter flashed red. Hayes looked down at his badge, blinking. The red glow blinked again. Access denied. The blonde attendant gasped. What? What's happening? Ariana turned slightly, her voice still calm. Accountability. Gasps rippled through the bystanders. Hayes tried his scanner again. Nothing. This can't be real. It's very real, Ariana said. It just isn't your reality anymore. Evan Morales stood silently behind her, watching the system he'd once feared now act in favor of justice. Ariana picked up her suitcase, smoothed the handle, and looked back one final time. You mistook silence for submission, she said. That was your last mistake. And with that, she turned toward the boarding gate, not escorted, not stopped. As the entire terminal watched the quiet woman they dismissed walk past them, as the owner, the reformer, and the storm they never saw coming. The red lights from the scanners blinked like sirens muffled in glass. Every staff badge at Gate 12 now read the same message: access revoked. No alarms, no shouting. Just silence, heavy, final, undeniable. Ariana didn't move. She stood where she had been insulted 9 minutes earlier, calm as stone, while the weight of consequence settled across the room. Mr. Hayes fumbled with his ID again, pressing it against the reader, as if persistence could rewrite the system. Nothing. The machine beeped, once dull and unforgiving. He turned toward her, face pale. You actually did it, I warned you, Ariana said. You just thought I was bluffing. The blonde attendant stared at her own badge, the red light reflecting in her tear-rimmed eyes. Please, Miss Cole. I have bills. A family. Ariana's expression softened, but only slightly. So do the people you humiliated today. Some pay their bills in dignity. You took that from them. A whisper moved through the crowd. She really fired them. Right here. Phones tilted upward again, not out of voyeurism now, but awe. The security guards took a step back, no longer protectors of authority but witnesses to its reversal. Ma'am, Officer Grant said carefully. What would you like us to do? Stand down, Ariana replied. No one's a threat anymore. Her voice wasn't cold, it was measured, the kind of tone that closes a chapter. Evan Morales stood behind the counter, hands trembling as he printed the final confirmation from corporate. "It's official," he said quietly. "Their credentials are frozen across all terminals." Ariana nodded once. "Good. Then we're done here." Hayes shook his head disbelief, giving way to panic. "This is illegal. You can't just fire people in front of passengers." Ariana met his eyes. "You didn't mind humiliating passengers in front of people. I'm just returning the mirror." That landed harder than any corporate memo ever could. A murmur rose from the waiting area, soft claps at first, hesitant, then building. An elderly woman near the seating area stood up. "I saw everything," she said, voice trembling but proud. "You handled it better than any of them deserved." Others joined applause that began quiet, then grew until it filled the gate like a wave of justice, washing away arrogance. Hayes tried to speak, but his words drowned in the sound. Ariana waited until the clapping faded into silence again. "Evan," she said. He looked up. "Yes, ma'am, you stood up when it mattered. That's leadership. Consider this your promotion notice. You'll report directly to corporate training next week." The young man froze. "Ma'am, I don't even know what to say." "Then start with thank you," she said softly. He did, voice cracking. The blonde attendant, still near tears, whispered, "I'm sorry." Ariana regarded her carefully. "Apologies are easy after consequences. Change is harder. Choose which one you'll live with." She reached for her phone again. "Nia." "Yes, Miss Cole." "Document their termination. Escort them out respectfully. Make sure HR reviews every gate staff member trained under Hayes' supervision. If bias is systemic, I want names." "Already in motion," Nia replied. The crowd had gone quiet again, no longer watching a scandal, but a transformation. Hayes' voice cracked one last time. "Why didn't you just tell us who you were from the start?" Ariana turned halfway toward him, eyes clear, calm, unstoppable. "Because power only means something," she said, "when people show you who they are before they know who you are." She paused, letting the truth settle. Outside the window, the afternoon light broke through a thin veil of clouds, washing the runway in gold. Ariana lifted her suitcase, the same one that had been thrown at her feet. The same case now looked like a crown she carried, not luggage, she reclaimed. She began to walk toward the boarding tunnel. No fanfare, no escort, just purpose. Behind her, 3 staff members stood stripped of Title 300 passengers, stood changed, and 1 young employee stood taller than before. In the span of 9 minutes, arrogance had collapsed and justice had learned how to walk quietly on heels that never hurried and a heart that never forgot. The echo of her footsteps carried through the jet bridge like a verdict. Each strike of her heel sounded measured, deliberate, a rhythm of closure. Behind her, the crowd remained frozen, the applause now replaced by a stunned reverence. The woman who'd been dismissed as a nuisance had just rewritten what power looked like. Ariana reached the threshold of the boarding tunnel, then paused. She didn't need to turn around. She could feel every eye still on her. But she did slowly, because some lessons deserve witnesses. The sunlight pouring through the wide terminal windows hit her scarf, scattering gold across her face. Her tone, when she finally spoke, was calm, but it carried the weight of generations. "This," she said, "isn't about a ticket or a title. It's about the quiet expectation that some of us still have to prove we belong. I stopped proving that a long time ago." No one moved, not even the guards. Ariana let the silence stretch. Then, "You don't fix bias by punishing it," she continued. "You fix it by exposing it, by making sure the next person in line doesn't have to live this scene again." She set her suitcase down gently, as if grounding the moment in reality. "Dignity," she said, "isn't a privilege. It's a right. And today we just reminded everyone of that." Her voice wasn't trembling. It was steady, anchored in something deeper than victory. The old woman from the seats near Gate 12 spoke up softly, almost to herself. "You made them listen." Ariana looked at her. "No," she replied. "I made them see." The distinction landed hard. Evan Morales stepped forward, unsure whether he was allowed to. "Miss Cole," he asked. She met his gaze, steady, kind. "Yes, Evan." "What happens now?" Ariana smiled faintly. "Now we rebuild. And we start by retraining every employee who ever forgot that kindness is part of the uniform." Evan nodded, shoulders straightening as though something inside him had just been repaired too. The supervisor, or former supervisor, stood silent beside the counter badge, blinking red in defeat. He wanted to speak, but the words that had come so easily before were gone now. All he managed was, "You. You changed everything in minutes." Ariana shook her head. "No. I just stopped pretending everything was fine." Her phone vibrated once more. Nia's voice came through quietly, as if aware of the gravity of the moment. "Miss Cole, media outlets are picking up footage. Do you want to release a statement?" Ariana glanced back at the crowd, at the passengers who had witnessed something that began as humiliation and ended as history. "No," she said. The moment spoke for itself. She lifted her suitcase, walked a few steps closer to the plane door, then turned one last time. Her eyes swept across the gate, not in anger but in promise. "I didn't raise my voice," she said softly. "I raised the standard." The words rippled through the terminal like a hymn, quiet but unstoppable. The guards lowered their heads. The passengers nodded. Even the air seemed lighter, as if the building itself had exhaled. Ariana took a final look at the gate, the scene of insult, the place of reversal, and stepped onto the plane. The door closed behind her with a gentle hiss, sealing the chapter but not the message. Outside, sunlight washed the tarmac in gold. The same plane that once symbolized separation now shimmered as a monument to change. 9 minutes. That's all it took for power to shift, not through anger, not through violence, but through the unshakable calm of a woman who knew exactly who she was. And as the engines roared to life, the passengers watching from the window didn't just see a plane taking off. They saw a standard, rising, one quiet, powerful woman at its helm, proving once again that justice doesn't always shout. Sometimes it simply takes flight. 3 days later, the story had circled the world. Clips from Gate 12 flooded every platform, the thrown suitcase, the red badges, the single line that ended it all. "I didn't raise my voice. I raised the standard." Ariana Cole didn't watch them. She didn't need to. She had lived it. Inside her corner office at Aerolux headquarters, the city stretched below like a network of possibilities. Her team filled the conference room, compliance officers, diversity leads, union reps, faces serious awake, waiting for her to speak. "Let's begin," she said simply. On the wall, footage of the incident played silently, Hayes sneering the crowd, watching Ariana standing calm. The image paused on her face. The exact second truth replaced shame. "Gate 12 wasn't a scandal," she said. "It was a symptom. We fix symptoms by curing the disease." A senior manager cleared his throat. "Ma'am, HR recommends disciplinary procedures across 23 regional branches." "No," Ariana interrupted. "We're not writing more rules. We're rewriting culture." She stood, walking slowly to the screen. "From now on, every Aerolux employee from flight attendant to vice president goes through behavioral recertification. Not just for customer service, for bias recognition, accountability, and empathy." "Nia took notes at lightning speed, beside her." "And the oversight board," she asked. "Expanded," Ariana said. "Add external observers. I don't want polished reports. I want raw truth." Someone in the back spoke carefully. "That'll cost millions." Ariana looked at him. "So does ignorance." A quiet laugh broke the tension. She tapped the table once. "We'll name the program the Horizon Initiative. Every branch will hold a town hall meeting, no scripts, no PR filters. People need to talk about what they saw, about how easily respect can disappear." Nia nodded. "We'll start with Seattle." Ariana smiled faintly. "Seems fitting." That's where the silence broke. Later that night, the office was almost empty. Ariana stood by the window, phone to her ear. "Yes, Nia. Make sure Evan Morales gets his relocation package. He starts in LA next month." "Understood." "He's still in shock," Nia chuckled softly. "Good," Ariana said. "Stay humble. That's how change lasts." She hung up, eyes drifting to the skyline, a sea of lights reflecting on the glass like constellations of consequence. Her reflection stared back at her, composed human, tired. But there was something new there, not anger, not even victory. Clarity. A soft knock at the door. The building janitor, an older black man in a gray uniform, peeked in. "Miss Cole, I didn't mean to bother you. I just wanted to say, that video, it meant something. Folks been talking about it all week." Ariana turned, genuine warmth in her voice. "It meant something to me too." He nodded. "Never thought I'd see somebody stand like that. Quiet but firm. Reminded me of my grandmother." Ariana smiled. "Then I did her proud." "Yes, ma'am," he said. "You sure did." He left and the office fell silent again. Outside, a plane streaked across the night sky, silver against black. Ariana whispered to herself, "That's the sound of reform." She reached for her tablet, opening a new memo. Subject company-wide address. Monday morning dignity isn't a department. It's our foundation. Every passenger, every employee, every voice. If we don't lead with respect, we don't lead at all. She read it once, smiled faintly, and pressed send. Down on the runway, another Aerolux jet lifted off its lights, rising through the dark, carrying her message across cities, continents, and boardrooms that still needed to learn what Gate 12 had already taught. Justice doesn't always roar through headlines. Sometimes it walks quietly through a terminal, checks in under another name, and rewrites the rules for everyone who comes after. By the end of the quarter, the name Ariana Cole had become shorthand for accountability. Business schools studied the Gate 12 incident like a case file. News anchors called it the 9-minute revolution. But Ariana never called it that. To her, it was simply a beginning. Across the country, Aerolux terminals buzzed with a new energy. Posters lined the employee corridors. Respect, it's not policy. It's practice. Silence protects no one. Every crew member had to complete the Horizon Initiative, a mandatory empathy and integrity certification signed personally by Ariana. At first, people grumbled. But then the numbers spoke louder than opinion complaints. Down 43% guest satisfaction, up 60% staff retention at a record high. It wasn't a PR campaign. It was reform with teeth. One rainy morning in Atlanta, a young flight attendant named Marisol Vega stood at check-in and watched a black couple approach her counter. They looked tired, wary the way Ariana once had. Marisol smiled gently. "Welcome back to Aerolux," she said. "You're early. Let me see if I can get you seated first." The woman blinked, surprised. "That's new." Marisol grinned. "No, ma'am. That's how it should have always been." The moment was small, invisible to most. But it was exactly the kind of change Ariana had hoped for, quiet corrections in places no camera could reach. At headquarters, Ariana reviewed the data with Nia. 63 complaints, closed 32, reconciled 9, still under investigation, Nia reported. Ariana nodded. "And the reinstatements, 5 former employees dismissed under Hayes' tenure are back. One of them sent a thank you note." Ariana smiled faintly. "Good. We're not erasing the past, we're repairing it." She turned toward the large glass wall behind her desk. The city glimmered below, planes slicing through a golden sunset. "You know," she said softly, "we used to think professionalism meant silence. But it was really just fear decorated." Nia looked up. "And now? Now professionalism means courage." The statement was simple, but it carried the kind of weight that sticks to memory. A week later, Ariana was invited to speak at the Global Aviation Ethics Conference. She didn't bring slides or a script, just the same calm tone that had silenced a terminal. "When bias hides behind protocol," she said to a room full of executives, "it doesn't look like hatred. It looks like procedure. It looks like someone following the rules a little too tightly, as long as those rules protect their comfort." The hall was silent. Every word felt like a scalpel. "I learned," she continued, "that sometimes leadership isn't about growth. It's about correction. Not of others, but of ourselves." When she finished, the applause came slowly, then built until it filled the hall. But Ariana didn't smile for the cameras. She thought of Gate 12, of the hum, the fear, the suitcase lying open on the floor. That memory didn't haunt her anymore. It anchored her. Back in Seattle, the old woman from the flight gate, the one who had spoken up first, received a handwritten note in the mail. "You reminded me that courage doesn't retire. A. C." She read it twice, smiled, and pinned it to her fridge. Because sometimes justice isn't a courtroom. It's a letter, a training program, a pause before a cruel word is spoken. It's the ripple that begins when one person decides enough is enough and means it. Outside, another Aerolux plane rose into the clouds. The logo shimmered in the sunlight, but it wasn't just a brand anymore. It was a promise that dignity could fly and never again be thrown to the ground. 1 year later, the world looked different, not because it had changed completely, but because more people had finally chosen to see. At Aerolux headquarters, a new plaque hung in the lobby, carved into brushed steel. The standard was raised here. In memory of the moment dignity refused to board last. Visitors paused to read it. Some smiled, others took photos. But for Ariana Cole, It wasn't decoration. It was accountability made visible. She walked through the lobby quietly that morning, wearing the same cream suit from Gate 12, not as a statement, but as a reminder. Every step echoed through the marble floor like a promise she'd kept. In the atrium, dozens of new recruits waited for orientation. Their name badges gleamed under the light. No one knew she was coming. Ariana stopped beside them and spoke without introduction. "Good morning," she said simply. "I'm not here to lecture. I'm here to welcome you to something bigger than a company." The room fell still. She continued, "You'll meet thousands of passengers in your career. Some will be loud, some rude, some quiet. You don't get to decide who deserves kindness. You give it to all of them. Because if you ever need to ask whether someone belongs here, the answer is already no. Not because of them, but because of you." Her tone wasn't sharp. It was gentle, but absolute. The recruits nodded, caught in the weight of it. That afternoon, she stood on the balcony overlooking the runway. The wind carried the faint scent of fuel and rain, the same blend from that day a year ago. Nia joined her holding a report. "Seattle gate traffic up 15%. Zero discrimination incidents this quarter." Ariana smiled. Zero. That's the number that matters. "Press is asking for an anniversary statement," Nia added. Ariana shook her head. "Let them talk. The story's not mine anymore. It belongs to everyone who learned from it." She watched a plane taxi toward the runway, its engines roaring low and steady. The sun dipped behind it, turning the fuselage to gold. "You know," Nia said softly, "you could have sued or gone public or destroyed those people's careers. But you didn't." Ariana's eyes stayed on the horizon. "Because justice isn't revenge. It's correction." They stood there a moment longer, the sound of turbines rising beneath them. The same song of motion that had once witnessed humiliation, now rewritten as harmony. Later that evening, Ariana returned to her office alone. The city outside shimmered reflections of flight lights flickering across the glass. She opened her drawer and pulled out a single photograph. The still frame from that viral video, her standing calm suitcase beside her, eyes unflinching. On the back, she had written 5 words in pen: "Never let silence lead." She slipped the photo into a folder labeled Legacy Files, then powered down her computer. Before leaving, she turned off the main light. The office glowed faintly under the city's reflection. One final plane lifted off in the distance, its lights tracing a silver arc against the night. Ariana whispered almost to herself, "Fly higher but never above humanity." And as she walked out, the automatic doors closed softly behind her. Not like an ending, but like the exhale of history. Because her story wasn't just about a woman reclaiming her place. It was about teaching an entire world to recognize its own reflection in her calm. Justice hadn't shouted that day. It had simply stood its ground, carried its suitcase, and walked toward the light, proving that true power doesn't arrive with noise. It arrives with grace.